The light in the apartment was always calibrated to a specific warmth, a shade Lysander called optimum tranquility. It filtered through the spotless windows, illuminating dust motes that seemed to hang suspended, unwilling to disturb the perfect stillness. Echo sat at the custom-built table, methodically arranging the day's correspondence. She didn't call it mail. Lysander called it information flow, and it was one of the many processes she diligently managed. For 3 years, this was her universe, structured, predictable, and entirely safe. Outside, she imagined chaos noise, random chance, and the crippling insecurity that had once defined her life. Lysander provided the antidote to chaos. He provided routine, rationale, and most importantly, the dependency score. Though he never spoke the number aloud to her, she knew it existed. It was the invisible metric of their love, a silent gauge of her stability and her commitment to the structured existence he had meticulously engineered. Echo believed fundamentally that if her score was high-meaning, her reliance on his system was total, he would never leave. Dependence was her armor against abandonment. Lysander walked in, clad in tailored slate gray. He didn't rush, but moved with a measured pace that suggested every footfall was accounted for, every gesture efficient. "Good morning, Echo," he said, his voice a low, steady baritone. "I see you've begun the information flow analysis. Did the weekly grocery delivery arrive on schedule?" "Perfectly on schedule, Lysander," she replied, her own voice soft, almost hesitant, as if waiting for permission to expand. The compliance index on the order sheet was 100%. He paused, looking at her with an expression that was both approving and vaguely analytical, as if she were a beautifully functioning machine. "Excellent. Consistency minimizes risk." Risk. That was the other central pillar of their life. Every action, every decision, was weighed against its potential to introduce variance, to create risk zones. Her dependency score was inherently linked to how often she mitigated risk according to his guidelines. A score too low meant she was drifting toward dangerous autonomy. But lately, a small, persistent fissure had appeared in Echo's tranquil acceptance, a tiny need for unreason. The day before, she had been placing his collection of antique maps in order when she had deliberately put the map of the Black Sea next to the map of the Pacific Ocean. It was a minor transgression, a violation of his strict geographical ordering, and it had made her heart pound with a thrill she hadn't felt in years. Lysander had noticed immediately. He didn't mention it, but later he had initiated an adjustment protocol, an hour-long review of their core relationship tenets. During the protocol, he hadn't scolded her. He had simply reminded her of the deep, debilitating anxiety she felt before he gave her structure. "You confuse freedom with instability, my dear," he had said, stroking her hair. "I simply give you the security you crave. The score reflects your need for this safety." The subtlety of his manipulation was devastating. He didn't demand obedience. He framed her compliance as a personal choice for her own psychological well-being. This morning, she decided on a larger transgression. She held back a piece of the information flow, a small postcard-sized advertisement for an art exhibition across town. It was garish, chaotic, and featured colors that violated Lysander's muted palette guideline. It was risk personified. She slid it into the sleeve of her cardigan. The crinkle of the glossy paper against the soft knit fabric sounded like a thunderclap in the silent apartment. When Lysander left for his daily 2-hour focus session, in his separate office session, where she was forbidden to interrupt, Echo retrieved the postcard. She stared at the vibrant, abstract image. It represented a world where colors clashed deliberately, where lines didn't stop at prescribed borders. An image of chaos, yet it drew her in with a magnetic, terrifying pull. It was a beacon from the life she had surrendered. She realized she wanted to go. She wanted to stand in that museum, surrounded by people she didn't know, and feel the bracing shock of the uncontrolled. This desire was a direct threat to her dependency score. She knew it. The very thought felt like a physical tearing of the bonds that held her together. As she paced the apartment, the anxiety Lysander spoke of began to creep back, a cold, sickening dread of being exposed and alone. She stopped in the doorway of Lysander's office, hovering. The door was usually locked, but today she saw the faintest sliver of light beneath it. Her dependency fought her curiosity. Go in and risk everything. Stay out and live a beautiful lie. For the first time, she chose risk. She pushed the door open, her breath catching in her throat. The office was not what she expected. It was not merely a workspace. It was a server room disguised as an office. Lash. 3 large monitors glowed, displaying charts, graphs, and live data streams. One central monitor, larger than the others, displayed a single, massive number in soft green, constantly fluctuating. Beneath it was a title, Dependency Score. The number was 92.4, a percentage. It was incredibly high, confirming her fear that she was almost entirely reliant on him. Below the score was a detailed log, a compliance ledger. It recorded everything. 9 a.m., successful information flow analysis, plus 0.2 points. Then she saw it. 1:15 p.m., deviation from geographical ordering protocol map placement, minus 1.5 points pending adjustment. Her small act of rebellion had been instantly quantified, digitized, and subtracted. Her life was a spreadsheet, and Lysander was the sole auditor. She scrolled down frantically, her fingers flying over the trackpad. She found entries dating back years, charting her emotional swings against her daily routine. The most shocking realization was the target range. A small, highlighted box on the screen read, Target range 88.0 to 95.0, do not exceed 97.0. He wasn't trying to make her perfectly dependent. He was keeping her in a state of perpetually high yet slightly uncomfortable dependency. A score too high, she realized, meant she risked becoming complacent, a static object of affection. A score too low meant she risked escaping. He needed her to be just dependent enough to be manageable, but just conscious enough of her dependence to be constantly grateful for his control. Echo felt a wave of nausea. The whole narrative of her salvation, of him finding her and building her structure, was a lie. He had harvested her dependency like a crop. She saw another field, exterior contact attempts. Underneath, a name she dimly recognized. Dr. Alistair K. rejected 3 times standard protocol. Dr. Alistair was the therapist she had seen years ago, the one who had urged her to seek independence. Lysander had systematically cut off her tether to the outside world. She heard a faint sound, the whirring of the server fan momentarily ceasing, then resuming. Lysander was returning. Panic seized her. She backed away from the desk, stumbling over the corner of the rug. The sound was loud, a violation of the apartment's carefully maintained acoustics. Lysander stood in the doorway, framed by the perfect light, his expression unreadable, yet radiating absolute lethal calm. He saw the monitors, the opened ledger, and her terrified face. There was no surprise, only a slight disappointed tilt of his head. A significant risk zone, Echo, he noted, his voice devoid of anger, merely stating a fact. I left the door ajar for 2 minutes. A compliance test, perhaps? The score, she whispered, pointing a trembling finger at the glowing green number. It's all a calculation. You designed me. He walked into the room, closing the door softly behind him. The click of the latch was final, isolating them completely within the sterile reality he had built. I organized you, Echo, he corrected, pulling up a sleek gray chair. You were a storm of anxiety, a torrent of self-doubt. I simply provided the vessel. I didn't choose this vessel, she cried, finally finding her voice. A raw, untrained sound that seemed foreign in the hushed room. But you did, he countered, leaning forward, his eyes holding hers with intense certainty. The moment you begged me for routine, for rules, for certainty, you signed the contract. He gestured toward the screen. Look at the data, Echo. Every time the score drops below 88, your resting heart rate increases by 15 beats. You fear freedom. I fear you, she said, though the conviction wavered. She remembered the gnawing terror of making her own choices, the crippling paralysis of independence. Lysander stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the blur of the city 7 floors below. You mistake security for fear. The art postcard, she challenged, pulling it from her sleeve. The vibrant colors looking utterly ridiculous in the muted room. Why can't I go to the exhibition? He turned, and a flicker of something close to obsession crossed his face. Because it is unnecessary variance. It will introduce external factors I cannot account for. He walked slowly towards her. The outside world is random, Echo. It will not care for your delicate structure. It will crush the serenity I have gifted you. But I want to see if I can stand up to it. she pleaded. I want to know if the person I am now is me or just your optimized creation. He smiled, a thin, chilling expression. And what if you discover that the person you are now is your optimized creation? What happens to the score then? It drops to 0, she admitted, the idea of zero dependence feeling like a vast, cold vacuum. And what happens to you when the score is 0? When you have no structure, no audit, no one to tell you which direction is safe. He didn't wait for her answer, simply opened the office door, revealing the familiar, tranquil living room. Go, he commanded, his voice suddenly authoritative. Take your postcard. Walk out the front door. Go to the gallery. Prove the data wrong. Echo hesitated. The hallway felt wider, the front door an enormous black void leading into the unknown. The controlled light felt like the only anchor to her sanity. Her dependency score flashed in her mind's eye, 92.4. It was the highest she had ever felt it, the weight of his control now internalized. I can't, she stammered, clutching the postcard so tightly the edges bent. Why not? Lysander pressed, his tone shifting, becoming gentle, almost mournful. You are free, Echo. I have never locked you in, because I don't know the subway system, she admitted, her voice shaking. I don't know how to talk to strangers. I don't know how to handle the noise. The raw, painful truth hung between them. He hadn't needed to build physical walls. He had built walls out of her own anxiety and insecurity. The structure is not the cage, Echo, Lysander said, his voice soft, winning.
Hey!
The structure is the protection from the cage you built for yourself. I just provide the key, but the key only opens one door, she whispered, looking down at the discarded postcard, the chaos suddenly seeming ugly and overwhelming. It opens the door to safety, he insisted, walking toward her, his posture returning to its controlled, perfect form. He was the cure, the system, the safe harbor. He gently took the crumpled postcard from her hand, his touch impossibly tender. He placed it in a small, discreet shredder beside the desk. The sound of the paper tearing was the sound of her rebellion dying. She watched the vibrant colors turn into uniform white strips. She didn't fight him. She had faced the door of independence and discovered the latch was on the inside. Lysander turned back to the dependency score screen, manually adjusted the ledger. 3:45 p.m. Self-correction of autonomy threat, plus 5.0 points. The dependency score instantly climbed to 97.4. She had violated the do not exceed 97.0 rule. A low, soft alarm sounded on the screen. The text under the score flashed. Warning, score exceeds optimum range. Immediate de-escalation protocol required. Echo watched in numb horror. She realized the obsession was mutual. He hadn't just made her dependent. He was dependent on her dependence. He wasn't aiming for a static score. He needed the continuous, subtle tension, the push and pull of her almost rebellion, and her ultimate surrender. If she became too dependent, the challenge was lost. And his sense of purpose, his identity as her controller would diminish. He quickly began typing on the keyboard, his fingers moving with frantic, uncharacteristic speed. This is fine, Echo. We correct, he murmured, more to himself than to her. We introduce a managed element of instability. A dependency audit. He looked up, his gray eyes suddenly intense. Tomorrow, you will choose the color of the flowers for the dining room. No input from me. A free choice. The simple task of choosing a flower color felt like a mountain. It was an impossible, overwhelming request designed to stress her back toward the acceptable range. Echo nodded slowly. She understood the game now. It wasn't about love, or safety, or even control. It was about the maintenance of the score, the perfect, dangerous tension of their codependency. She was his data set, his experiment, and his source of absolute, necessary control. And he was the only structure preventing her collapse into the noise. The dependency score hung at 97.4, a testament to her complete retreat. She was back in the cage, but now she held the bars herself. She walked out of the office and back into the living room, the optimum tranquility lights suddenly feeling cold and artificial. Lysander followed, his composure restored. He smiled a loving, possessive smile. Welcome back, my dear. I knew you would choose the stability. The psychological cage was complete, a monument to the disastrous entanglement of obsession and fear. Their relationship was a continuous, self-correcting loop of control and surrender. If this exploration of obsession, control, and dependence captivated you, dive deeper into the darkness. Comment, like, share, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio.